Time is almost up to vote for your favourite designs in the BrickLink Designer Program Series 9. Crowd support ending Friday, October 17th. And with well over 400 submitted, there's certainly plenty to choose from. Now, usually I do a video on each theme, but as I haven't had time to do that this time round, a bit of a longer video here because I am going to share with you what I feel the best are across all the themes and which 5 are most likely to get picked. Now let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, but for now let's get started with the buildings. And this one caught my eye, coming in at just under 2,200 pieces. It doesn't have many comments on there, so it doesn't seem like it's going to have got much support, but I really like quite how colourful and quirky this is. A mixture of cafe and cinema, as you will see in a moment. But there's some really fun parts usage in here, like the bananas going up as the railings on the stairs, and it's just a design that doesn't take itself that seriously, which, funnily enough, appeals to me. It's absolutely packed full of features and also has some fun minifigures in there as well. It's basically just an excuse to have a whole load of fun, and really that's what LEGO is about. I also like that it's got a little stand you can put your phone in so that effectively you are going to be streaming a movie for your little minifigures. I do like the fact that our fan designer has had to highlight that the phone is not included, although considering the price of some of the sets now, that probably does need to be stated. After all, the Death Star is going to be giving the iPhone 17 a bit of a run for its money. Overall then, while the build doesn't blow me away, I think that it's a bit underappreciated and wanted to highlight it because there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the design and it really makes me smile. Now my next choice from the buildings is this Holiday Corner Street, coming in at just under the 2,600 piece mark. It does fulfill a bit of a need after all. Corner builds are not that common, and it's certainly a space that can be hard to fill. Bearing in mind as well that the overall shaping is not the easiest to put together, I think that this has been done really nicely. It's also done a good job of choosing colours that are quite complementary without clashing. Now on the inside it does look like it's a little bit cramped to get to simply because of the shaping, and therefore quite dark. A little bit difficult to see what's going on. That might also make it a little bit more difficult to gain access to and a bit trickier to take the different layers off as it is modularized. Those are only minor drawbacks to my eye though, as the general aesthetics of this are really good, and it's certainly a build I'd be quite pleased to have. This is one baby you can definitely stick in a corner. Sadly for it though, as well as it has been done, there are certainly some much stronger contenders to come. Now my next pick is on the much smaller side of things, the Tortilla Sunrise Tacos, coming in at sub 1,000 pieces. And I think this style of build always does pretty well when it comes to the vote, and definitely the sort of thing that LEGO tends to lean more towards. Now it's fun and colourful, and despite being quite compact, is not shy of features either. It is really full to the brim. I also think it strikes the right balance between being unique enough in its own right, whilst also being complementary to a lot of building setups in general. It's another that's also quite tongue-in-cheek in places such as the cactus down here, playing the guitar. Why is it that wherever you go these days, there's always some prick busking with a guitar? Well, you can't get much more prickly than that cactus. I also think this place is much too healthy for me with the fruit. I prefer the look of the sausages under the table, or else the taco just on top. But for all its silly little quirks that the designer has given it and the fun colours, I do feel it is a great little design, and coming in at this piece count makes it really strong. Now, right up at the other end of the scale, coming in at basically the 4,000 piece count, is the Mad Scientist's Laboratory. I'm not going to go into this one too much because I did cover it last series. And wherever possible, I'm going to try not to go back over ones that I've already covered, unless they've massively changed. That said, there has been some improvements to this, and whilst it's certainly not a complete makeover, I could not leave it out because it's just so cool. Also, credit where it's due, I love it when our fan designers take the extra time and effort to give us images like this. I know it's not easy to do, and that's why I do also try to pick ones out where, you know, the builds are still good even though the images aren't great. But when you can do them like this, it really does help bring the whole thing to life. No pun intended, actually, bearing in mind this is sort of based around Frankenstein. But it has been brought to life. You know, it's spooky, it's quirky, it's fun, got some great storytelling. But most importantly of all, I think, is that here is a design which looks great and also you really want to get involved and actually play with. You know, it's just crying out for that. So I love this build. It's one of my favourites. Now, obviously it wasn't picked last time round, but I feel that it is a really good contender. Or is that conductor? Either way, if you like it, if you haven't voted already, make sure to go on over and do so. The clock is very much ticking. Moving on though, the Forest Mill House is another which caught my eye. Could easily fit into a sort of medieval build as well. 2,280 pieces. This is the big downside to it because it's a pretty small build. I thought it looked great and would be strong in a lower piece count category. Unfortunately, I do feel it's a bit too big. Now that is of course just a necessary side effect of having such wonderful detailing and so many small pieces down here. And I do feel that this would really help set the scene for anybody like myself who likes to have a large display of different models set up and sort of creating a world. This is great for that. I just feel that sadly it's probably a bit too big. Going to be sticking it up against some other sets which would win out over it, but still wanted to give it a shout out because I do think that it's been done very well. Now this next one is another which I feel is very strong in the small category. 570 odd pieces, and yet again really packed with character. Now I think it is meant to be a coffee cup, although with the cherry blossom tree and the Japanese tilt, I think it would make more sense if it was either a cup of tea or actually a nice teapot. Possibly an improvement to be made there. So I think tea would make more sense, but the designer can always try again. For what it's worth though, I do think that this is a nice design. I do like the little food trucks and the cafes, so this is a bit of a twist on the idea. I do feel that there are stronger ones in this small category to come, and I'll give you my thoughts on which is probably most likely to win out a little bit later in the video, but credit where it's due, there is a lot going for this. And whilst I think it would make more sense for it to be a teapot, I've got no problem with it being coffee. It's more a personal thing. I just still am pretty wary of it because for years I used to get a really bad pain in my eye every time I drank coffee. Eventually though, I did learn to take the spoon out. Moving on, we come to a fantastic winter build, being the Winter Cottage, coming in at just under 2,300 pieces. And for those of you who do collect the winter sets, I don't need to tell you that this is a pretty cool looking one. First of all, I love the way that this roof has been done. It's really different, very clever. Having the snow just on the edges like this also really helps to highlight the incredible shaping that's been captured. And it's a really clever building technique. I would love to put this together. Quite frankly, I think it looks great. It would be awesome for display, but also just a really fun one to actually construct. And I really like Lego sets where you can actually enjoy the process of getting an incredible looking erection. No doubt about it, that's what we've got here. Now, I don't know why Santa Claus appears to have Hercule Poirot's moustache. That's a slightly odd choice. Also seems like a very small chimney to try and squeeze his bulging sack down, but it'll be worth it when he gets inside because this interior is really nicely laid out. I think it's been very prettily done. Love the center section here, especially with the little pictures. Got a nice amount of space in it too, you know, enough room for the tree and to position all the different minifigs. So this is another that's got quite a lot going for it. I know some people won't like having it open like this, but that's always just down to personal taste. No doubt about it though, it's definitely the brilliant shaping of this roof, which really lends so much character to this one. As for the old garage, it is my next choice, coming in just under 2,900 odd pieces. And whilst the building itself is pretty nice, there's nothing really about the exterior which blows me away. What I do like is the fact that we get some really nicely designed vehicles with this, and the interior of the garage itself as well, to be fair, there's a decent array of minifigures too. In fact, I always think that builds like this do pretty well because whilst they are perhaps not as totally outstanding as some of the others, they're also not very polarizing, so it can appeal to a lot of people, it'll fit into a lot of different designs. And I am impressed with just the overall layout the fan designer has given us here. Nothing's too cramped, it's all really nicely appointed. To be frank, I just feel that this is one that I wouldn't particularly want to see win. You know, just personally, there are others that I do prefer. However, if it did, I wouldn't be disappointed. And you know what? I still would actually be interested in crowdfunding it because it's just a pretty solid build all round with some really nifty bits to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if that does pretty well during the vote. Now, following the Red Rose Castle, we've had a little bit of a change here. We've now got the Red Rose Hospital, built apparently upon the ruins of the old castle. It is pretty much as big as the old build was at basically 4,000 pieces, and it's certainly an interesting one. I'm not sure what people would feel if we did have a hospital with a sort of angel right on the front, and especially not when we go on the inside. We've also got sort of an angel of death up here in the foyer. And it's probably not what you want to see when you're visiting the hospital, but hey ho, it is certainly well appointed, modularized again. I do feel that it's time we got another hospital, and this would be a really fantastic one from display purposes. There are certain things I don't like. The ambulance, for one, I think that's far too squat, sort of with the big off-road tires as well. It just doesn't look right to me at all. Very juniorized in comparison to the rest of this. I'm also not convinced on the roof and where the helicopter pad is. It just looks a little bit wrong and empty. But then I also understand there's not any pieces left over for a helicopter. That aside though, when we come onto the interior, it is absolutely jam-packed. There is so much going on in here. It's a really nicely well thought out build. Aesthetically pleasing, just in the overall architecture, but also the different areas throughout the inside of the hospital as well. I'm also a big fan of the Archimedes screw, having the lift here. You know, that is an important point. There was, not that long ago, a couple of series ago, a pretty good hospital I really liked. However, the designer hadn't put in a lift, hadn't put in any stairs, and that does affect the believability. So the fact, you know, you've got both here, there's room has been made for that. I think that's a nice touch. I also like that this guy looks very worried about what this nurse is about to do with this implement. I think I definitely would be worried as well, quite frankly. Overall then, this would be a fantastic build to add to your city setup. It's just got so much going for it. Couple of bits where there are room for improvement, but you know what, if it did get chosen, hopefully that's something they could fix before it was actually shipped out. Just really does need a better ambulance. Otherwise, fantastic design. As for my next choice, it is this, the 3,700 piece, almost anyway, subway square. And a really cool layout overall. Of course, we have the tube station down the bottom here, and then up top our vibrant street scene, and it can be opened and closed. So you've got a couple of choices on how you want to display it. When it is open round the back, we still have a decent amount to take a look at. You know, some fun little extra features, and I like it when fan designers take the time to do that, because, you know, most of the effort has obviously gone in round the front, but it's good not to forget these extra fun little bits round the rear. And of course, it is an added bonus that you've got different ways that you can choose to display this. You know, in all honesty, I sort of bypassed this one initially, and then I kept coming back to it, looked at it again and again, kept finding different things that have been added in there, and it really started to capture my imagination. And I've definitely come down on the side of really quite enjoying this build, and do think that it would be a great one to have on display. So thumbs up from me. Another I would certainly be willing to crowdfund were it to be chosen. Now, along the lines of the Mad Scientist Laboratory from earlier, Brixster Dam is one that I also featured in a video from the last series, this one coming in just under 3,400 pieces. Once again, it has had some improvements made to it, and I really like the way that this can be displayed. I did have a couple of conversations with people, I think from Series 8, who said that they didn't like the different colours here. And usually, I am one who's very picky when it comes to that side of things, but you know what, actually, for me, it works. I don't find them too clashy. I think that they are quite complementary in a way. And I also really enjoy the shaping of this. It's just different. So many different parts to it again that you can get involved with and start to explore. So whilst I'm not going to go back over it, you know, too much, I want to give airtime to newer designs that have been submitted, or ones I haven't covered before anyway. But I simply cannot miss it out because I still feel this is a really strong build, and another I think is very much in contention. Exactly the sort of thing I can really see being picked out as a winner. So let me know what you think of that in the comments. But then we come to this, the Space Cafe, 2,545 pieces. As a big fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, this immediately makes me think of the restaurant at the end of the universe. That's the way that this would be better. But you know what? This is such a flamboyant, in-your-face, weirdly, wackily shaped, brilliant design. I love it. Space doesn't get that much outside, you know, Lego obviously did the big push on their space city sets, etc. And they've all got the very samey classic colours, and then you've got the Technic side of things where you do get more orange and stuff, and it's all very well and good. But then there's something like this, which is just so outside the box. Perhaps too much. Maybe it's not going to appeal to a whole load of people, but I think it's fantastic, you know, for what it's worth. So fun, brilliant. It's got vibes again of a Pizza Planet from Toy Story in a way. It's got the arcade game, which those of us who are of a certain age will certainly remember playing this sort of thing. And it's all been laid out wonderfully. I love the use of colours. You know, on this one especially, I really do, the way this has been all laid out and put together. Beautiful, clean, polished floors, just the right amount of studs by the look of it, positioned throughout to to pop our minifigures on, and a good dose of humour in there as well. On top of the building, there's also a pretty cool space-style car that's been proposed with this too. So here is a build, every single part of which I think has been thought through almost painstakingly, and yet it's so fun. I really feel that our fan designer is onto a bit of a winner with this. That said, the next one is by the same designer, and it is this, the Fisherman's Village. Now, look, the same person cannot win with more than one build in the same BrickLink series. But boy, this is another fantastic one. Bigger in size, basically 4,000 pieces, the Fisherman's Village. You know, if you've got the LEGO Ideas Lighthouse like I do, then having this position near it would just be brilliant. What a scene setter. It's so atmospheric. And another where the shaping is lending so much story to it. It's something I've noticed actually with this series. I think maybe designers are stepping outside their comfort zone, starting to do builds which are a little bit more different in the way they're constructed, and I'm loving it. It's another which I can just see myself getting involved with. You know, I'm not just enjoying the finished product, I'm already imagining starting to put this together and, you know, having the boat, finishing that, enjoying looking at it, moving it on to the next bit. And of course, plenty of nods to wink to other sets, from the ship and the bottle to the Endurance. I think the Titanic's perhaps a little bit on the small side compared, but I'll forgive it. Obviously, the LEGO Ideas Lighthouse there, I already mentioned. It does fit in so well and has been really cleverly done. So I feel that this is definitely one of the strongest contenders of BrickLink Series 9. Stunningly good build. I really, really like it. On now, though, to some choices from the vehicles, planes, trains, boats. And we will kick off with this 574 pieces, the Jolly Dock. Very close to what I was nicknamed at school, but then I did always wander around wearing the same sort of Speedos. This is really quite impressive, actually, considering the small piece count, how detailed the seaplane is. You know, in all fairness, I have been saying in videos for the past few series of BrickLink that we really need something like this, and I now feel that this is the strongest contender that we've had. You know, I love the little dock that we've got here, really nicely appointed, good couple of minifigs, the cat, the parrot, they're all great. But the star of the show is the plane. Oh, and the lobster as well. Okay, the cat, the parrot, and the lobster. Mustn't forget that. I'll be accused of being crustaceanist or something. Now, the thing that really impresses me about this most is just the piece count. There was one earlier, I forget which one it was now, in this video that I said I really liked, but I felt the piece count was too high. I look at this and I really don't know how you build something that looks this good with that few pieces. Excellent job. Certainly one I would like to have. Now, in all fairness, I could say the same for this, the Fish and Trips. Let's try that again. The Fish and Chips truck, the Anchor. Well, that is a bit of a tongue twister, that is. I'm not a pheasant plucker, I'm a pheasant plucker's son. I'm only plucking pheasants till the pheasant plucker comes. Right, 664 pieces. It's another that I have brought up before. I thought it was good then. I think it's great now. That fish looks like an absolute whopper. I tell you what, if I was served one that big, I would be at that food truck every day. Yeah, it's good old Beaky the Pelican. It's a really nice build. I thought that it might be in with a chance of winning actually last time round. Obviously it didn't, but not to say that it couldn't this time. Same designer as the Popcorn Wagon, which I crowdfunded. And I think this would be an excellent accompaniment to it. Now, back to another building, although this is under the trains theme, because of course it is the signal box. 1,300 odd pieces to this one. And given that it is a relatively small build, it has been very nicely appointed. You know, it's got a really polished finish all the way around. Much as I am a fan of a big train station and other ones that we've had from the BDP, you know, smaller ones like this, there's certainly a place for them. And I think at this piece count, it fulfills that very nicely. This fella looks like the one who was playing Santa Claus on the other build earlier on the roof. Now, I know that this is a little bit more niche. There aren't as many who like the general train subgenre as much. But for those of us who do, I think this would be a very welcome little build. And I do feel that given that piece count is a particularly strong submission. Now then, you might think that looking at this, the Wood Brick Freight Depot, however it is you say it, you might think that this is a much larger piece count, but actually 2,200. Again, impressive. Given the scale of it, you can tell just by looking at, obviously, in comparison to the size of the minifigs. I'd have thought that it was more. I probably said that the last time we looked at this, because it is one that I've covered before. Again, it didn't make it through last time round. but it does have a lot going for it. And we've had plenty of train stations. So, this is just that little bit out of the box. Go very well with if you've got that sort of setup, but it isn't just a full on in your face train station again. It's different. Now, I won't spend too much time on it because I have covered it last series, but I will highlight it again as one of my favorites because I just feel that it's been so well constructed. And probably most importantly of all, the fact that without being an actual station, for those of us who have got those, not just from previous BrickLink series, but also just from LEGO in general, this really adds on to that very nicely. So, even if you voted for it last time and it didn't get chosen, don't be put off. Make sure to go and do so again while you still can. Now, though, we move on to a few sets from the Pirates theme, beginning with this Pirate Shores of Miriorama. I'm going to go with that. Could be wrong, but never mind. 1,600 pieces to this one. It's certainly not the sort of thing I would normally go for. However, I think it's actually quite clever because effectively what we've got here is 5 independent little scenes which you can then combine and put together into one. However, that said, you can, of course, switch it round completely. The order that you place these 5 in is completely up to you, and regardless of how that goes, it all does seem to blend together quite nicely, and that's very clever. You do also have the option of just having the 5 individually spaced around if you would so wish. Personally, I wouldn't. I'd like to have them together, but just that creativity of being able to switch it around, I think is a really nice and a pretty unique part of this, because ultimately you could have this on display and then a couple of months later get slightly bored of it, you switch around, you've got a completely different sort of scene. Not something that you can do with a traditional Lego set, so I do like it. I suspect that perhaps I will be more in the minority there, but nonetheless it gets the thumbs up from me. Now, Pirates, of course, brings me on to the White Shark Imperial's Prison, 3,170 pieces. I spoke a lot about this last time round, so I'm not going to go into it a huge amount here, other than to say that this is probably the best pirate set proposed I've ever seen. I really do love this. I think that it's such an incredibly clever combination of overall aesthetics, the wonderful character that's been captured in it, the shaping is brilliant, and then, of course, just how ingenious it is with the mechanisms and the ropes for opening the doors and raising and lowering the different cages with the prisoners in. That's just not been done before, and it's so wonderfully thought through. If you would like to see more about that, then do go and watch my my video from the Pirates on BrickLink last time. Actually showed the mechanisms in there and the way that Vangelis put it together, because it is superbly clever. All I will say though this time round is that I was very disappointed it didn't get picked last time. I'm kind of not surprised because I appreciate that Pirates doesn't have quite as much as the following, but it is my favourite theme, and this is such a special set. I'm not sure that LEGO are going to do Imperials, just the way they've gone with other pirate sets recently makes me think that perhaps it's not something that they're willing to indulge in. And that's a shame, because this is a wonderful set and one I would love to crowdfund because, and this is the last thing I'll say on this set, is it's so clever in how it's been put together. It's not something that I could mock. There are sets that I see designers proposing and they are brilliant. They look fantastic, but I also take a step back and think, you know what, I could do that myself, or something very similar. I could mock it together. So when you get things like this, I couldn't do it. I would have to follow the instructions and I would learn as I was doing it. And I honestly feel that that's what the BDP should be about. It's those extra special builds that push the creativity and the design aspect and leave us with something that looks fantastic, is great to play with, but also you've learned in the process of building it. I don't mind admitting that, and I'll keep my fingers crossed that it does make it through this time round. Now, I also want to mention this Treasure Cove, 3,500 odd pieces, and it's, again, something that I would not typically go for, but I really like the concept. The chest looks pretty good, and the key with the pirate on the keychain hanging from it is very funny. But it's the fact that it does open out like this that really captures the attention and the imagination. I think these more micro-scale ships and just the overall build as a whole play a nice homage to the pirate sets that we had of old, albeit on a much different scale. But fitting them in like this and doing it in the treasure chest, it's a great concept. Now, ironically, considering that it is inside a treasure chest, I think it's perhaps a little bit too far outside of the box. It's quite polarizing and won't appeal to a lot of LEGO fans. However, As niche as it is, I think it's been done absolutely brilliantly. I would be quite happy to own that. And again, I just want to highlight it for that reason. I don't think it's going to win. It won't be one of the 5 that I'm predicting to do so, but it is innovative and I think one of the best sets that's been proposed for Series 9 in its own way. So that's why I'm including it. Very good job, well done. Now it's a similar story for this. Funnily enough, this isn't pirate related. This is now pretty miscellaneous. But we have the working toilet coming in at just under 1,200 pisses. And it's just brilliant, isn't it? I mean, look, you've got our little space astronaut here converted with the flipper feet, ready to take the plunge, quite literally, into the toilet. And there's just so much going on here. From the loo roll to the little rubber duck. It reminds me again of a Lego Masters challenge. I think it was Lego Masters Australia, where they had to do life-size things and one of them was in the bathroom. And this reminds me of that. It's fantastically good fun. Totally silly, of course, absolutely ridiculous, but that's why I love it. It's got the working mechanism so you can flush the studs down. I have absolutely no idea how many votes this is going to get. It's just totally bizarre. But in its bizarreness, it's also brilliant, and I really love the humour. I think it's great. I don't know how I feel about having a Lego toilet, whether I would actually want to crowdfund that, whether that really does just sum up exactly what I'm doing with my money. But at the same time, I kind of very weirdly want it. So let me know what you think about that one in the comments. And then this one is also very different. The Border Terrier, a happy dog. Look, I don't think this is going to get picked again, but I'm really impressed with it. 2,800 pieces. You think about what Lego did to the Lego Ideas cat. I mean, I thought that was just very poor what they did to it in the end, but regardless, this is brilliant. I mean, the texture that's got here, it wouldn't be fun to put together, so many little pieces, be very fiddly and quite annoying, and you'd probably easily get things put in the wrong place, but I really like the way that the little dog has been captured here. I think the expression is awesome. The overall shaping, for the most part, is very good and realistic. There's a couple of bits on the shoulders that don't look quite right, and same down here on the tail. Apart from that, I think this is a fantastic job. It's so wonderfully textured. It really looks like a scruffy little fur ball that you just want to play with. The way the eyebrows have been done and just the overall face, it's superb. And not only quite different, but also pretty difficult, actually, to be able to do this and get the shaping, especially around the head here and the forehead into the muzzle. That is hard. So again, I suspect it's far too niche. I don't think it would get picked, but I'm going to highlight it all the same because that takes a lot of the care and attention and time and effort to work out how to do that. I think it's brilliant. Now, I did do a video on the castles and the medieval, and the Viking shipyard, whilst obviously not a castle, was one of the standout builds for me from the medieval theme. Just over 3,000 pieces. And I have to say, I think it is a phenomenal looking thing. I really do adore the colour that goes into this, the overall shape. But then I'm a big fan of the Vikings anyway. And I feel that this is taking that, putting it into a Lego world and sticking a bit of tongue-in-cheek in there, doing it marvellously. Now, I talked through the building in that other video, but just as a general overview, obviously modularized so that you can access different parts of it. Plenty of fun to be had, and also a good use of negative space in places as well. In other words, it's feature rich, but it's not so cram full that you're going to struggle to actually position your minifigures in there. Now, of course, one of the most fun elements is this, the sea monster, which when you turn the little lever down here, pops in and out. It's another which is very deserving to be on this list because I truly feel it's one of the best builds that's being put forward. Would it actually be chosen? I'd like to think so, but then I suspect that perhaps the Viking theme overall isn't something that they're going to be choosing to have as one of the sets. We shall, of course, just have to wait and see about that, but I would be very keen to add it to my collection, that's for sure. Very similar story for the Hydra shipyard. I mentioned in the medieval video how I appreciate the cleverness that it's taken to transform this from what was a pirates themed set into one that is now a very sensible base for our new castle faction. It makes sense to me, being a seafaring people, that they should have a base very much like this, a fortress with a shipyard where they're going to be building said ships to go out and raid and pillage upon the other factions. I'd also be really interested to see how this fares in voting overall and whether they did pick it, now that it's undergone this big change from its initial, how it was proposed initially in the Pirates theme. There is no denying, however, that as cool as this is at the piece count, in the way that it's been constructed as a fort, you could also go with a slightly more traditional castle like this, once again for this faction, and it's really ticking off the same brief in terms of the boat and just making sense as a base of operations. And I almost feel like an amalgamation of the two here would be ideal, because I love the shipyard and frankly I feel the ship here is better. But then I also like the idea of having the slightly more traditional style castle but forged into the rocks. Just trying to think of what's going to go alongside the other BDP castles that we've had so far, as well as things, of course, like, Lion Knights. This certainly has a lot going for it, again, in terms of play and display. Being bracketed, you can have it folded out like this or in upon itself, and that interior is not shy of detailing either. There have been some really good castles and fortresses in this series. None, if I'm honest, which I like quite as much as I did the likes of Dustmark Keep. However, this does come very close and is brilliant for our new faction. So quite frankly, we're pretty spoiled for choice now. As for which will actually be the final 5 that are chosen, we all know that castles sell really well, both to genuine fans and also for other reasons like scalping, which is a pain in the arse, but hey, it happens. Commercially, it makes sense for LEGO to go with one, and from what I've seen, I would probably put my money on this. I think it more likely compared to, say, our Viking shipyard. As much as personally I'd like to add this into my collection, I just don't see it selling as well as, say, Driftwood Keep here. And I know it's comparing apples and oranges, but it's just the way that I see it going. Now, this is a big set, just under 4,000 pieces. That means there's only really room for one other in this sort of size category, were this to be the one that they choose. I'm going to take a guess at it being one of the 5. As for the other, I really think that it's going to be this. The Fisherman's Village, I find this outstanding. It's such a brilliant build. Very cleverly designed, and I really feel this is going to appeal to a lot of people. But again, really topping out the piece count. So I think that could be the other one. Having said that, I do love the Space Cafe. Being in this sort of piece count range as well would really change the scale of what they could potentially choose, but we cannot have 2 designs by the same designer. And which you prefer is a very personal choice, but ultimately I think the one that I like a little bit more is going to be this, and I also think probably commercially the one that makes slightly more sense might be that as well. But feel free to argue about that in the comments down below. It's hard because ones like the Mad Scientist Laboratory, I love it, it's so fun. There's a big part of me that wants to see it win, but this is where it becomes difficult because you can't then have 3 builds of that sort of size winning out, so I think it might get pipped to the post. Who knows though, all the ones that I'm featuring in this video are frankly good enough to win, in my opinion. From the small builds though, I think that my favourite has got to be the Jolly Dock. I also feel it's the one that best lends itself to being both a standalone little set and one that could fit in quite nicely with a whole range of different setups. The piece count is phenomenal for what you're getting here. The small end of things is always highly competitive and quite difficult to call, but for me, I would guess at this. And then something keeps bringing me back to this working toilet. I think it's ridiculous, and there's a big part of me that's saying, don't be stupid, there's no way that they would pick this, no way that enough people would even vote for it, but I just really like it, and I think it's different and quirky and fun. So it would be a cool one to win. I can't seriously say that it's going to, though. Would make sense from a piece count point of view, but beyond that, it's really just whimsy. So it is very difficult to call this series. There are some truly fantastic builds, ones that I haven't covered, generally because they're things that we have seen before and I'm trying not to repeat it. Others which are new and do look really cool, but in my personal opinion aren't quite good enough. That is the beauty of the BrickLink Designer Program, so let me know what you think is going to win out. I do suspect Driftwood Keep is going to be one of them. I also think that the Fisherman's Village is going to take the other big spot. If it doesn't, and it goes to the Space Cafe, then that opens up for things such as the Mad Scientist Laboratory or Brixster Dam as possible alternatives, and that would then make things slightly easier to call. And yeah, at the small end of things, I do think that the Jolly Dock is probably the best one of the bunch. Only time will tell, though. We will have to wait and see. So thank you very much for watching. Trust you've enjoyed my silly musings, and perhaps I'll see you again sometime on yonder horizon.